Before the incubator, I felt like I had so many ideas. I felt like I was always on the edge of having a few ideas come together. I think I've always been trying to tie the different threads of what I love to do and not necessarily trying to create one unified thing out of it. But I feel like I'm just always seeking to bring things together because of my diverse interests. I think the common threads that I found I had arrived at before the incubator were that I love the ocean, I love biology, I really love seaweeds, and I wanted to bring things together in a way that combined my love for being near the water and in the water and also studying it. Like I love learning new things. So I was trying to find a way of bringing my knowledge together and learning new technology and getting inspiration from lots of other people, you know, from diverse backgrounds, and just trying to see what I can come up with. Sounds really vague. So hearing about the incubator, and having a chat with Maggie and learning about what it was, it felt very much like you finally have a little base, a little stand, a little foundation to rest on. Because before that, all you felt were, you're just constantly trying to tie things together and you feel like you can't quite fit somewhere. And that's quite a universal feeling, right? Because everyone has such different interests. And so learning that it was okay to have interests and skills in many different areas and trying to pull something together. And that was the crux of what this whole incubator was about. It just felt like I feel like I have somewhere where I can just breathe for a moment. I guess I came into the incubator thinking, look, I have a bunch of unfinished projects. I've had lots of small little illustration projects and projects that I tried to turn into animations and little stories that I want to tie up. And I came in actually thinking that I was going to learn technology to bring these to life. But along each step of the way, I was encouraged to just let it go and enjoy what I was learning, um, including just staying open to what I was interacting with, the opportunities that I had to learn about 3D printing using recycled plastics and new biomaterials, the bioleather workshop, projection mapping, and just learning to just stepping in and experiencing all these new technologies that I hadn't had access to before. And then somehow it turned into me thinking about my specific experiences and just trying to distill how I can bring them together and combine them with the new things I'm learning. So it became something about creating something new instead of finishing off what I felt like I never finished off. This incubator was really the first time I sat down and put together my past interests and what had led me here. And I found the common thread in what I had done was it was always about growing different things together, right? And it all sounds really academic, and I think it's just partially because I'm a nerd and I love learning. If we brush aside all the exterior labels of like, oh, university degrees, for me, it's just always about learning something new and discovering um, something new and learning cool things and how they're connected and interconnected in in theory or physically. So my initial experience, I worked in a stroke lab. I did some research looking at brain and spinal cord injury and the inflammation surrounding it. And I grew brain cells and bone marrow cells in dishes and tried to find out what made the bone marrow cells angry and what made them happy and whether they could help neurons to grow. And I just remember just looking under the microscope, and counting the cells before you plate them out. And it just always looked like you're looking down, but up at the sky with stars, just a different color. And that's how it's pretty mundane. You're counting lots of things using a clicker, but this is how enthralled I was by what I was seeing. And, life happens and sometimes research doesn't work out. Funding finishes, projects don't go the way they're supposed to, and you move along. And sometimes, life happens and other things happen, and you try and shut it down, right? You try and forget it and move on and move on to something else. And I decided that, if I to treat the new stage as a blank slate. And so I went for learning more about the ocean, because I thought, I have nothing to lose. Why not try? And so I was given the opportunity to do a project. And it incidentally also has to do with growing different things, growing different native species together with oysters on an oyster farm. And I learned that I love shellfish, I love seaweeds, learning about how we can grow them together in a way that recycles nutrients. But also, it diversifies the crop options for the farmer, which is the more practical aspect of it. And in all that experience, there's the academic learning, there's the experimenting, there's the process of trying to create a research piece and trying to think about how to make things happen. And in that process was also just me getting a lot of ocean time, which is what I really loved. Starting to learn to surf when I was living in Australia during the time when I was doing the spinal cord injury research made me want to paint again. And that science started me on getting into that science, and then getting into the ocean started me back on the journey to creative work. Taking that with me, I wanted to get further into how can I immerse myself in ocean things, like physically, diving and free diving and surfing, but also creatively, how do I harness all this awesomeness and put it into something I want to create. It's basically these two threads, right? That came together in Awhi Incubator. And I think, how do you phrase it? What happened was me learning that, I don't have to shut down a part of my past because I felt like I failed. And now's my chance to bring together all the things I really loved about what I have learned. And just, seeing the parallels in them, seeing the actual similarities between looking at a neuron and how it branches, and how there's a bit at the synapse that looks like the end of a kelp plant, not a plant, a kelp seaweed, anchored on a rock. Just really literal similarities. Even though neurons, there's a big, neurons are quite diverse in themselves as well. And also, how being in the water, being in nature, being around the ocean, what it actually does to your brain. And, studies have shown that nature is really important. Being around the water, being in water actually changes your brain. It can help calm some people. It can scare some people as well. So, it's not a linear thing, but it produces an impact on you. And I think this was the beginning of me just trying to bring that all together into a piece. And surprisingly, it became quite like an academic undertaking, right? Which became the piece that I wrote for Awhi World, for the publication. Because I was exposed to all these new techniques, it allowed me to feel like it was possible to aspire to beyond drawing. It made me think about how I could potentially use materials around me, say the flax in the garden, that in the place that I'm living in, and seaweeds foraged from the beach. And it made me think about how I can use these materials plus what I learn and to create an installation. And Unfortunately, it hasn't happened during this incubator, but that's where I'm aspiring to. Tinkering in the backyard, in the background. A surprising pivot that Afi World has brought about is I've gone back to school again. Practicalities of looking for work out in rural Northland. Um, and if it wasn't for this incubator and me allowing myself to just have have it on my radar again, all the things that I've loved, I would not have clicked on that job ad. The job ad was looking for a trainee MRI technologist. Now that rings of my past life in neuroscience, and when I was in the stroke and spinal cord injury lab, we had lots of MRI images in the background during meetings. So it felt like something roughly familiar, but I had, pushed all that aside for a long time. And if it wasn't for the Afi World Incubator, I would not have clicked on that job ad to go. I would not have looked through the description and went, hey, maybe I could try this. I would not have contacted the HR person and gone, hey, this is my background. Um, is there a possibility for me to apply for this? And here I am, uh, about to start my traineeship in July. Because of the incubator, I'm currently going through a phase of a lot of study, which I'm loving, and it's quite challenging, but it's fascinating. I'm learning more about the human body and how structure relates to function at the cellular level as well as the gross anatomical level, and what happens when things goes wrong. And we know that in this particular case, the end point is to become trained in being able to use a magnetic resonance imaging machine, which to me is, such cool technology. And I think, being in the Afi World Incubator has made me tune my radar to, like, hey, be more open to technology, even though it's been around for a while. Like MRIs have been around for 50 years, and just going, I can include cool things, cool tech into my creative practice and in my daily life and in my work and in my job. For me, and once again, any excuse to learn something new and find out cool things. Stepping into MRI, I'm very, very fortunate to be in this position where I'm going to be learning from this amazing team. And it's just like what the Afi World Incubator has been like, just learning from just people who are so good at what they do and bringing so much inspiration and knowledge. And so I'm getting to appreciate and learn and practice this whole new way of looking at the body in a way that's helpful for finding out what's wrong. And just thinking about things in different planes and how the different organs and bones and joints and muscles come together. At the moment, I can't quite tease out how I'm being inspired by it, but I'm just soaking it all up. And I think moving forward, I'll be incorporating more comparisons between what we find in nature and what we are made of internally, and at the visual level, but also at the metaphorical analytical level. Like you know basically a neuron is taking in lots of information from its surroundings, just like how a tree would, or a single unit of kelp would. And it's always responding. And I think I'm really interested in that kind of dynamic. Another cool thing that's been sitting at the back of my little brain for years is this very cool connection of how Mechnikov, who's hailed as the father of immunology, he discovered cells that phagocytose that eat up foreign things, and that forms part of how our natural immune response is. It's a very primitive way that our body recognizes something foreign and eats it up, to simplify. Um, in a very simplified way. And he discovered that looking at starfish larvae. So he put a little thorn in a little starfish larvae, and he observed under the microscope these cells that come together and start trying to protect that starfish larvae from this invading foreign body is what you call it. And so you recognize on different levels how much discovery is permitted or is enabled by technology, right? If there wasn't a microscope, he wouldn't have seen that. So I'm just trying to, on many levels, just remember to be open to incorporating more technology in my future steps. Or not, or I might decide to go acoustic. But just being more aware of it, I think. I'm excited. I wish there were more hours in the day. Definitely, I want to thank the Awhi World team, and big thank you to Maggie and Kim and all the other members in the incubator, just for showing up, just for deciding to sign up for this and see where it takes you. And I've just been really inspired, looking at what everyone's been coming up with. Big thank you to the Ministry of Culture and Heritage for making this possible, and I'm really grateful to the Awhi World team for having this foresight of making this possible for us.